life a better meaning. Let me stay where I'm in phase. I feel better on the weekend. I feel better on the weekend. Give my life a better meaning. Let me stay where I'm in phase. I feel better on the weekend.
Welcome to Cyber Threat Intel, your go-to source for the latest updates, news, and insights on cyber threats. Our goal is to arm you with the knowledge to protect yourself in the digital age, whether you're a cybersecurity professional or just curious about the threats lurking in the digital shadows. Make sure to subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast listening platform to join us on the front lines of cybersecurity, because in the world of cyber threats, knowledge is power. Hey, welcome to Cyber Threat Intel. I'm your host, John Good. This is episode number 22. It is April 23rd, 2024, and it is Tuesday. So glad to have you here. If you're watching the live stream, if you're watching the replay, or listening to the podcast in replay format, doesn't matter. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you tuning in. So if this is the first time that you are joining the stream, joining the show, tuning in, there's a few things you need to know about. First of all, typically what we do is we give people a few minutes to tune in, to sign on, and join the show, and we go over some notes originally, and then we'll hop into the rest of the content as far as the articles and the threat intelligence that you need to know about. So definitely, if you need to grab a snack, grab a drink, go do that real quick and get ready for the show. Also, depending on where you're listening to the show or watching the show, there's a few different ways you can find us. So first of all, we'll always be on YouTube. YouTube's kind of like the home base. So that's where we do the live stream. And also, if you want to watch on LinkedIn or Twitter or X or Facebook, we're on the John Good Cyber pages. So John Good Cyber profile on Twitter and on LinkedIn, which is my personal profile, or the John Good Cyber page on Facebook. So you can watch the on-demand version of this or the live stream on all of those platforms. You can chat, you can engage with the stream. Highly recommended, and definitely check that out. If you prefer to listen to the audio podcast format, so maybe just like audio format, right? You can search on any of the popular podcasting platforms, Spotify, iTunes, there's a whole bunch of them, right? Just go to your favorite podcast platform, search for Cyber Threat Intel, and we'll come up in the search results, and you can listen to us there. If you go to cyberthreatintel.com, which is our website, again, cyberthreatintel.com, you can find all the platforms that we're on directly listed right on the website. So it's a little bit easier to do that that way. And if you go to the website, you can also check out the article feed. So all of the articles that we cover in the show episode, so this episode, all the previous episodes, as well as articles that we did not cover in the actual episodes. So that way you can either read more into the articles that we cover, or you can read some of the other content that we put in there that is worth reading as well, but we just didn't have time to get to those. We also put in highlights. Sometimes we'll put in notes, things like that, and you'll be able to see that directly in those, which makes it very convenient to actually see all the information. So definitely recommend doing that. If you have professional certifications, CISSP, Security Plus, whatever, right? There's a whole bunch of them. You can actually claim a half a CPE per show towards your certifications. So if you want to help maintain those, right? You want to maintain them for free, you can get up to 2 CPEs per week, right? For this show, we do Monday through Thursday. So that's 2 CPEs or CEUs, whatever you want to call them, right? Per week over the course of a year, you're looking at over 100, right? So that is definitely worthwhile. Do not miss out on that value. It's free, a free way to maintain your certifications. Waiting to the end of the year and trying to rack up a bunch of webinars and things like that doesn't work very well. It's a very stressful thing to do. Just take the CPEs every week and get credit for those every week as you're going through the year, and then you'll be good by the end of the year, right? So definitely do that. Let's see what else. Make sure to get your Cyber Threat Intel merch. There's mugs, there's shirts, there's all kinds of stuff. If you're listening on the podcast, I'm just showing up a mug right now, but the link is in the description. You can check out all that stuff if you're interested. So with that being said, we still have more people that are hopping on the stream here, so we'll give them a few more minutes. And while we do that, we'll take a second to talk about our sponsor for this episode, which is Cyber Training Pro. So I will see you on the other side. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cyber Training Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. CybertrainingPro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today. All right, thanks to Cyber Training Pro, our sponsor for this episode. We love our sponsors. We highly recommend that you show our sponsors some love as well, because they are what help contribute to this show and support this show so that we can do all this content for free and give it out to you, right? So we're always appreciative of our sponsors. If you're a company and you're interested in sponsoring content, make sure to check out the description because there is more information about how you can kick that conversation off and actually get in contact with us to sponsor content. So again, we love our sponsors and they help make a lot of this possible. So we did have a super chat here from KG. KG says, "Hey sir, I've been thinking about going into cybersecurity. I have 8 years of military experience. Would any of that help?" And of course, super chats are always going to get recognized on the show. If you have other questions, you can always throw them in the comments, in the chat, in the comments after the fact, or if we have after shows, and you can also ask them there too. But so you have 8 years of military experience. Absolutely. There are so many different jobs or career paths that can develop skills that are relatable to or transferable to cybersecurity. So definitely with the military, I mean, obviously you're going to have things like leadership and discipline and, hard work and all of those kinds of skills. Those certainly will transfer regardless, right? Now, it depends on your specific job role, right? Because there are certainly going to be job roles that are going to be more transferable than others, right? If you're writing procedures or technical documentation or you're dealing with computers, those kinds of things, then absolutely those are going to be even more transferable over to cybersecurity. If you're in investigations, forensics, there's just so many different roles where it could extend a lot more transferable skills than just kind of those core things that you learn as part of being in the military, right? So great question. Appreciate the super chat.
Well, thank you very much.
And glad to have you on the stream as well. And then Samuel Darko says, "Very glad to be here. Glad to have you as well. Glad to have you." And KG says, sadly, just an underpaid grunt. I was a 12B. I'm not sure what 12B is exactly. I could look it up, but I'll look it up after the fact. But I mean, just focus on those main things, those main skills that are transferable really to any career field, right? Because those would definitely transfer over to cybersecurity. So let's go ahead and flip over to the articles here. So, and as I said, with questions, as we're able to get to them, we will try. Certainly super chats will get put into the show. Or if we have an after show, which we do after some of these episodes, we're not doing an after show today, but we will be able to answer those as well. Or you can throw them in the comments, and then I'll always respond to those as well. So getting into the articles here, the first article is SynLab Italia suspends operations following ransomware attack.
No!
SynLab Italia has suspended all its medical diagnostic and testing services after a ransomware attack forced its IT systems to be taken offline. Part of the SynLab group that is present in 30 countries worldwide, the SynLab Italia network operates 380 labs and medical centers across Italy. It has an annual turnover of $426 million and carries out 35 million analyses every year. There's a quote here. It says, "As soon as they became aware, the IT department proceeded to exclude the entire corporate infrastructure from the network and to shut down all the machines in compliance with the company's IT security procedures. So their incident response procedures or disaster recovery, business continuity, something, right? Reads the company's announcement. Another quote here, as data processor pursuant to Art 28 GDPR, we inform you that to date, we cannot exclude that this attack may concern the personal data referred to in the services provided to you and under your ownership of the treatment, SynLab Italia says. It also says, meanwhile, effort is being made to make sure that malware is no longer present on the IT infrastructure and to restore systems from backup. So, a couple important things here, right? Depending on where you are in the world, right, some countries have better restrictions or regulations in place regarding privacy of data, how data is maintained or managed, how it's protected, how it is just secured, right? If we look at, for instance, the United States, we have things like HIPAA, which is specifically focused on healthcare data, certain requirements as far as things that have to be in place in order to process, maintain, store healthcare data, right? EPHI. In places like Europe, you have things like GDPR and several other restrictions or regulations, privacy requirements that have to be in place in order, and you have to comply with them in order to maintain a good status, right, with the law. So that's kind of the first thing, right? So as a company, you have to understand those regulations and those requirements that are in place, because a lot of those requirements, they have very specific guidance or requirements as far as how you have to respond to data breaches, right? If you are breached and you have to comply with compliance requirement X, what is the requirement, right? Once you understand that there has been a breach and it's successful, not successful, whatever the requirement says, how do you have to respond? How fast do you have to respond? Is there a certain threshold that you have to consider in responding, right? So maybe you have a requirement that says if 1,000 people are affected, you don't have to respond for like a month or something, right? Like, and I'm just throwing things out here, but to give you an example. Or if 100,000 people were impacted, right, or their records were accessed, then you have to respond within 24 hours. So there are definitely some differences between the different requirements and different compliance standards that will put in different restrictions in place for that. So typically when you have that requirement, then you're going to make a policy. That policy will reflect that requirement, and it kind of has a domino effect of impacting other things throughout your security and compliance program, right? So that's really an important thing to understand as you're kind of standing these things up, as you're putting policies into place. The other thing is here, and good on them, is that they had some kind of incident response process or plan or business continuity plan, right? Depending on what it impacted, if it took things down. But they had a response plan of what they needed to do when a certain scenario happened, right? And that is so important in organizations, right? Because a lot of times, organizations are going to get breached, unfortunately. It's one of those things where we can't stop everything. And so you need that response plan in order to take action or do certain things once you are notified or you identify that an incident or some kind of critical event has occurred, right? Again, this is kind of cybersecurity 101 stuff. You've learned about this if you've studied things like the Security Plus or a lot of these just basic certifications that are, at the entry level. And then they go deeper into them and things like the CISSP and some of these other certifications. But these are kind of standard things, right? And then the other thing here is just the response overall as far as recovery and eradication of the overall malware or whatever is identified, right? So if we look at something like the NIST incident response process, we have things like PICRL, right? That is a very important acronym that you should commit to memory. But preparing for incidents, identifying incidents, then if you identify an incident, how do you contain it? Then you have to eradicate it, then you have to recover, then you have to document all your lessons learned, right? That's kind of the standard process for incident response and what you need to do throughout that process, right? Because obviously you're going to prepare beforehand. Then when things start happening, what are you doing? How are you identifying it? How are you containing it? How are you getting rid of that, right? That's the eradication phase here. How do you restore the systems? And then you got to document your lessons learned, right? You got to keep improving. So incident response is huge. And I know this article seems kind of like kind of basic, but those are key things, right? Like those have to be in place in your organization. All right, let's see here. All right. Stand by here. I apparently have to block somebody. All right. Facebook people. All right. That may even be one reason why Facebook does not get included on this, because yeah. All right, cool. Ignore the chat on the screen for a second, right? Bots, and yeah. All right, whatever. Yeah, so ignore that. I have blocked that person, so they should go away. Let's see. Samuel Darko says, my CYSA Plus is coming up due and I want to renew it with your webinars. What is the way forward? Yep, you can absolutely do that. Just make sure to, you have to go to the CompTIA website under their requirements, and you'll actually have to document it, right? There's a specific way that each certification has that you have to follow in order to document it. Typically, it's you have to provide a URL or, the title, like those kinds of things. So definitely check that out. Next article here, researchers uncover Windows flaws granting hackers rootkit-like powers. New research has found that DOS to NT path conversion process could be exploited by threat actors to achieve rootkit-like capabilities to conceal and impersonate files, directories, and processes. No! When a user executes a function that has a path argument in Windows, the DOS path at which the file or folder exists is converted to an NT path. Safe Breach security researcher or Yair said in an analysis which was presented at the Black Hat Asia conference last week. There's a quote here: during the conversion process, a known issue exists in which the function removes trailing dots from any path element and any trailing spaces from the last path element. This action is completed by most user space APIs in Windows. The so-called magic dot paths allow for rootkit-like functionality that's accessible to any privileged user who could then weaponize them to carry out a series of malicious actions without having admin privileges and remain undetected. It also says here, the underlying issue within the DOS to NT path conversion process has also led to the discovery of 4 security shortcomings, 3 of which have since been addressed by Microsoft. It says elevation of privilege, EOP deletion vulnerability that could be used to delete files without required privileges, elevation of privilege write vulnerability that could be used to write into files without the required privileges, tampering with the restoration process, gives CVE-2023-32054, and a remote code execution RCE vulnerability that could be used to create a specially crafted archive, which can lead to code execution when extracting the files on any location of the attacker's choice. That's CVE 2023-36396. And then a denial of service vulnerability impacting the Process Explorer, CVE 2023-42757. So this is one of those things, when it's in an operating system, that makes it so difficult, right? Because you're not generally going to update the operating system. It's kind of one of those things that you just kind of have to live with in some cases. But There are also ways that you can monitor for certain things, right? Like if you are watching command line arguments or things that are put into the command line, then certainly you can add this kind of stuff to your SIM tool or filtering that you have in place. So definitely, definitely look into that if you're monitoring traffic or you're dealing with things like SIM tools, because this is something that you would want to try to look for, right? Next article here. Crush FTP file transfer vulnerability lets attackers download system, and I believe that's supposed to be system files. They must have cut it off on the article, but Crush FTP customers have been warned to patch and actively exploit a vulnerability that allows attackers to download system files. In an advisory dated April 19, 2024, the file transfer company said that Crush FTP version 11 versions below 11.1 contain the flaw, which enables users to escape their virtual file system VFS and download system files. Customers using a demilitarized zone DMZ perimeter network in front of their main Crush FTP instance are protected from attacks. Anyone using Crush FTP version 10, 9, or prior requires a version 11 license to download the update. So you're going to be forced into getting that newer version in order to actually get the update. It says exploiting file transfer software is an effective way of compromising many targets at once, as demonstrated in the heavily exploited MoveIt file transfer vulnerability in 2023, which drove a huge volume of ransomware attacks by the notorious Clop gang. It also says attackers can obtain data directly from the file transfer appliance without requiring additional lateral movement into target environments. So certainly any kind of file transfer capability, software, application, right? File transfer in general can be a very risky kind of thing. And we've seen that with things like ransomware, right? Ransomware is one of those things where it just continues to be present in our enterprise networks. And, you know, they even talk about it in here, right? With the Clop gang and the MoveIt file transfer vulnerability in 2023. So something like this, you know, I mean, when it's critical, you just have to update the software, right? One of those things with software lifecycle management and that whole process, your software inventory and removing vulnerabilities, when new versions come out, sometimes you just have to do it, right? Like you just have to get that newer version in order to stay secure, in order to patch the actual software. It is interesting to see this whole thing with the version 11 license being required. You know, I wonder what the strategy behind that is, right? Sometimes that's a strategy to force people to upgrade into the newest version and to get the latest updates and to continue to support the different software applications or services. That's typically the case, right? We've seen that with a lot of other software vendors, and you just have to be aware of that, right? You have to be aware if you have to get that new software version. But then it's like if you're going to update software, right? Not just this particular software, but if you're going to update software at all, how does that impact the rest of your organization? Is that going to impact other areas of your network? How many licenses do you need, right? Those are all kind of considerations that you have to make within your organization. Let's see here. Next article, police warn partnership with tech industry at risk over end-to-end encryption. I think a lot of you are going to find this one interesting. Partnership between law enforcement and the technology industry is at risk due to end-to-end encryption, warned a joint declaration on Sunday from European police chiefs. Although the company was not named in the statement, it follows social media giant Meta announcing in December that it had begun rolling out the technology as default across all personal chats and calls on Messenger and Facebook. End-to-end encryption is a way of designing communications so that the encryption is applied and disapplied by the end devices, making it impossible for the service or network provider or any hackers accessing the network to read contents of messages. So we've seen a lot of debate over this whole idea of end-to-end encryption and protecting messages for consumers, for your customers, right? And a lot of it comes down to law enforcement. Those are typically the ones that are most debating it, right, or most actively debating the need to not have end-to-end encryption. It says the statement published Sunday repeats the argument that the way end-to-end encryption is being implemented will hamper police's ability to investigate serious crimes such as child sexual abuse, human trafficking, drug smuggling, murder, economic crime, and terrorism offenses. Right? So one of the things we've seen law enforcement argue is the need for a backdoor. Give them a backdoor access, right? But then we've also seen law enforcement and governments abuse that ability, which is kind of why we find ourselves in this situation. Technology also undermined the ability, and this is a quote, the ability of technology companies proactively to identify illegal and harmful activity on their platforms, the European police chiefs stated. So because it's encrypted, these platforms cannot regulate or they cannot investigate or see or decipher, read anything that is going into these messages, right? They are completely kind of hands off. They can't see it. At least that's what they're saying, right? Police are complaining about the way end-to-end encryption is implemented rather than just end-to-end encryption in general, as they argue there are additional technologies such as client-side scanning or adding an additional police end to chats that could help address these concerns. Okay, so they are arguing, as the police or the law enforcement, they are arguing that in your software, you should add some kind of client-side scanning agent or something, most likely that the police control, right? And then that way, you know, even though the traffic from one destination or one location to another, one client to another client, even though that channel is encrypted, it's going to be scanned before it's sent, or it's going to be scanned when it's received, right? On both sides, but not across the channel. Or you can add a proxy location, right? You can add an intermediate location so that it goes from client A to the police. The police get to check it out to client B, right? So they are proposing that you implement a man in the middle situation, but it's not malicious, right? Because it's the police. But you should implement a man in the middle location so we can make sure that nothing bad is going on, right? So Jeffrey Christian says, kind of like the instant tap in the telecommunications industry. Yeah, I mean, it's like they make it sound way less invasive in this article, and I'm sure how it was proposed, than it actually is, right? Like, we know as cybersecurity people that man-in-the-middle attacks are not good, right? Those are not good things. But the police seem to be in favor of that. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to see these kind of proposals, right? All right. Next article. North Koreans secretly animated Amazon and Mac shows, researchers say. I think a lot of you are going to find this interesting too. For almost a decade, Nick Roy has been scanning North Korea's tiny internet presence, spotting new websites coming online, and providing a glimpse of Hermit Kingdom's digital life. However, at the end of last year, the cybersecurity researcher and DPRK blogger stumbled across something new. Signs North Koreans are working on major international TV shows. Interesting. In December, Roy discovered a misconfigured cloud server on a North Korean IP address containing thousands of animation files. Included in the cache were animation cells, videos, and notes discussing the work, plus changes that needed to be made to ongoing projects. Some images appeared to be from an Amazon Prime Video superhero show and an upcoming Max, aka HBO Max, children's anime. That's interesting. Findings and security labs detailed in a report by the Stimson Center think tank's North Korea focused 38 North project, which helped analyze the findings along with Google-owned security firm Mandiant, providing a glimpse at how North Korea can use skilled IT and tech workers to raise funds for its heavily sanctioned regime. It also comes as U.S. officials increasingly warn about North Korean IT workers infiltrating companies and their outsourcing. So I've talked about that on this show, on this channel before, the idea that North Korea is trying to infiltrate other companies, right? We've seen this as a common tactic where there are North Korean, citizens, people, right, military, whatever, that are putting out, for instance, fake job postings. They are putting out malware in PDFs, job PDFs that are laced with malware, right, to infiltrate companies. They are actually trying to go work for companies, right, so they can take secrets, they can take information, and they just exfiltrate it back to North Korea. Like, this is a very well-known tactic that is being executed on the regular, and especially over the last several years, we've seen it amp up, right? And especially with things like remote working and where you don't have to physically be in a certain location, right? It's getting worse and worse, right? And sometimes it's hard to spot this stuff. So this is not necessarily new, but it is interesting to see things like, an upcoming show being basically copied, or things taken from that and kind of repurposed in North Korea, right? North Korea's internet is a small and fragile space. So yeah, I don't know how much you know about North Korea, but it says the repressive nation only has 1,024 IP addresses and around 30 websites that connect to the global internet. While there's a limited internal intranet, only a few thousand of the country's 26 million people can get on the internet, and when they do, it's highly controlled. And it says too here, these select few North Koreans can use the internet for an hour at a time, and they have to have a person sitting next to them approving their use every 5 minutes. So imagine that. You're using the internet, you have somebody sitting right next to you, watching what you do, saying every 5 minutes if you get to continue to use the internet. Man, that, first of all, that sounds painful, right? That is unfortunate because the internet is a great thing. Obviously, it can be a bad thing for some people, right? And people can cause all kinds of harm and do all kinds of bad things. But in general, right, the internet is a fantastic thing. But again, I don't know how much you know about North Korea. There's a whole bunch of documentaries out there that if you're interested in just knowing more, go check those out. They are certainly interesting to hear about some of this stuff. But it's a very isolated country, right? They are not allowing people like you and me to just go on to YouTube and watch videos, right? Or to learn kind of whatever they want. And so like the internet is very closely guarded, right? Typically, a lot of the people that have access to the internet are either, the wealthy or they're part of the military, right? Like those are definitely the common use cases for the internet, right? It's not a lot of this, just the general population that are able to go on the internet. And then of course, content is blocked for a lot of things there because they want to protect what kind of information is coming in and kind of that ideal, their ideals that they have, right? Or that they are trying to push or enforce, right? So definitely interesting. I mean, probably a little bit more extreme than you'll see in like companies, right? Certainly in companies, you're going to limit certain things that people are going to see, but you're also wanting your employees to learn and access the internet and do things that will help the company. So, but interesting nonetheless. Next article here, Russian sandworm hackers targeted 20 critical orgs in Ukraine. Russian hacker group Sandworm aimed to disrupt operations at around 20 critical infrastructure facilities in Ukraine, according to a report from the Ukrainian Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT-UA. So we've actually talked about some of these critical infrastructures being hacked or being attacked by different groups, especially with Ukraine and Russia. CERT-UA reports that in March 2024, APT-44 conducted operations to disrupt information and communication systems at energy, water, and heating suppliers in 10 regions of Ukraine. The attacks occurred in March, and in some cases, the hackers were able to infiltrate the targeted network by poisoning the supply chain to deliver compromised or vulnerable software, or through the software provider's ability to access organizations' systems for maintenance and technical support. Third-party risk, supply chain risk, right? Third-party vendor risk management, third-party management, right? We've talked about these kinds of things a lot on the show. We will probably always talk about these things, right? These are huge issues. If your supplier gets breached, that's a bad day for you if you don't understand how that relationship works, how that data flow works, how you can cut off their access, right, and prevent that from happening, how much access they have, what they have access to, all of those things, right? Those are all key things. Look back at popular examples of supply chain breaches, and you're probably going to get a little bit scared if you don't know about them, because there are some serious issues with supply chain security, but especially with critical infrastructure, right? Critical infrastructure, you have to be even more cautious about who has access, what you're bringing into your network, the current patch levels of that software. Does it have internet access, right? Like all of those things matter. They matter so much. But check out SolarWinds, check out the Target breach. There's a whole bunch of examples, right? CERT UA experts have confirmed the compromise of at least 3 supply chains, as a result of which the circumstances of the initial unauthorized access either correlate with the installation of software containing backdoors and vulnerabilities, or are caused by the regular technical ability of the supplier employees to access the organization's ICS for maintenance and technical support. CERT UA machine translated. So again, what do they have access to? What are they able to do? What are the patch levels of that software? How often do you vet all this stuff? How often do you review these the accesses, the vendors? There are so many things related to vendor risk management and third-party risk that that's why you see it as literally its own job, right? Because the bigger you get as an organization, the more there is to do, right? The Ukrainian agency notes that Sandworm's breaches were made easier by the target's poor cybersecurity practices. Shocker, right? Lack of network segmentation and insufficient defenses at the software supplier level. Weak third-party risk management, weak supply chain risk management, weak vendor risk management, whatever you want to call it, right? These are all words that you can use to describe this kind of situation or this kind of activity that you have to prevent. And then just gives a lot more information about this. Definitely check this out if you're interested in supply chain security. I highly recommend that everybody has at least a better understanding of supply chain security than they do today, right? There's always room for improvement. It's always a good idea to investigate and learn more. House bundles TikTok ban. House bundles TikTok ban in a foreign package. The House once again passed a bill that could ban TikTok from the US unless its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, divests it. But this time, it's in a way that will be harder for the Senate to stall. The bill passed 360 to 58 as part of a larger bill related to sanctions on foreign adversaries like Russia. It's part of a package of foreign aid bills that seek to provide military aid to Ukraine and Israel and humanitarian aid to Gaza. Due to the urgency of the funds, packaging the TikTok bill with these measures means that the Senate will need to consider the proposal more swiftly than it would as a standalone bill. The earlier TikTok bill, which passed the House 352 to 65 last month, has so far lingered in the Senate, with lawmakers there giving mixed messages about its future. During debate on the bill Saturday morning, New York's Representative Gregory Meeks, the top Democrat of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, said he supported the package that includes the updated TikTok legislation, even though he voted against the standalone version. Meeks said he opposed the earlier standalone TikTok bill out of concern that it would be a broad authorization that could be misused for far beyond what we in Washington are currently debating beyond just TikTok. So TikTok is still in the news. There's still all this debate about banning TikTok or not banning TikTok and what they need to do in order to not be banned. And this discussion has been going on for I think 2 years or something, right? It's been going on forever. And there's all these people that are out there that are, that continue to say, well, ban TikTok, or TikTok is going to be banned, and what's going to happen, and all of these things, right? So I'm interested to see how long this is going to go on, because again, it continues to be in the news, continues to be a story that that doesn't go away, right? I don't know what to tell you, right? We can't get to where everybody agrees on should TikTok be banned, or what are the stipulations or the requirements to not be banned. But again, as we talk about this and similar circumstances or similar situations, as far as your company, right, the company you work for, what happens if you're in this situation, right? What happens if your parent company becomes under a lot of scrutiny? How does that impact things, right? What if you work, for example, like at TikTok, and then you get banned, or your parent company gets banned or something, right? You lose your job because of that. These are all reasons why, as an employee, as a professional, that you need to be building your skills for the things that companies want, right? Don't just isolate your skill set to the company that you're working for and become so focused on that you forget the bigger picture and the other things that you can do to make yourself more marketable, more desirable by other companies, right? Because if you're in that situation, you don't want to be so focused that you have nothing else to give other companies, right? And I'm not saying that's the case with a TikTok or something like that, but that happens, right? There are totally people that become so fixated on certain skills that they forget about everything else. Now, as far as TikTok in general, obviously there's a lot of controversy around TikTok. That's probably not going to go away, right? Not in the near future. So we will continue to monitor this situation. I'm sure we'll talk about it again. It's probably maybe tomorrow, maybe the next couple days, maybe next week, right? But I'm sure in the near future, we'll have to talk about TikTok again. So curious what your thoughts are of TikTok. What do you think? Should they be banned? Should they stay? What do you think? So with that being said, that is the last article for today's episode. So I'm glad that you were able to join me. We had a lot of people hopping on the stream and joining in the conversation. Always great to have you here. Remember, we're available on a lot of different platforms. We'll always be on YouTube. That is like our home base. So if you're interested and you want to watch the live stream or the on-demand replay, YouTube is always a great source. You can always find this episode on Facebook as well as LinkedIn and I was going to say TikTok, not TikTok, Twitter or X under the John Good Cyber profiles. So just the John Good Cyber page on Facebook, John Good Cyber profile on LinkedIn or X and Twitter. And make sure to check out that if you want to watch the replay. If you're interested in a podcast format, it's the audio only version, you can go to your favorite podcasting platform, search for Cyber Threat Intel. You'll be able to find us on there, or you can go to cyberthreatintel.com. Again, cyberthreatintel.com. And we list everything on there that you can find and pick your platform of choice, right? Also, if you go to the website, you can also access the feed so you can see all the articles that we covered in this episode, other articles that we cover in other episodes, as well as other articles that we add that we didn't have time to cover, but they're valuable to read and be aware of. So definitely check that out as well. Make sure to grab your Cyber Threat Intel merch. If you're a company and you want to sponsor content, make sure to check out the description because there is more information about how you can kick that conversation off. And with that being said, we're going to wrap up today. Again, there is no after show in today's episode, but I will see you in the next one. See you later. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cyber Training Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. CybertrainingPro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. There's so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today.